Hello, everyone. Tonight's class is by Carl. He's going to teach us how to set up our audio for our Christmas show. Take it away, Carl.
All right, thanks. My name's Carl Mirsky. I live in Cartersville, Georgia, which is northwest of Atlanta. My show is Imagine Christmas Lights. We've been running animated lights since 2010, and have done lights for years before that, like most everybody here. I also started a voiceover business back in 2015, Jingle Bumpers, because I have a face for radio, as they say. Jackie can attest to that. So what I wanted to do is we get a lot of questions. I get a lot of questions about audio, setting up your audio. How do I add silence? How do I cut off parts of a song? How do I create a mashup? Things like that. So we're going to kind of walk through that. Um, and what I'm going to do is use Audacity for that, right? So I'll say that Audacity has been around for many years. It's an open source software program. You can use it for editing files. You can use it for creating files. You can use it for adding voice to files. It's basically a full digital audio workstation. Um, some people have heard of Adobe Audition. I use Adobe Audition a lot, but I still use Audacity for doing a lot of editing work.
Hey, just checking. Did
Oh,
somebody
I'm not
press the
sure.
record button?
Hang on. Did they?
I don't see a recording button.
Yes, I'm
Nope.
recording.
All right.
Okay, I just didn't see a red button,
Well,
a
let
red
me
light.
share. All right. Hopefully it's sharing with audio. How do I check here? Hang on. Should be. Should be sharing with audio in here in a minute. All right. So anyway, so I use Audacity. And what we're going to walk through is how to use Audacity for the most part to edit your music files. You can download it. It's free, open source software. Um, over here, if you go to audacityteam.org and you go ahead and download the latest version. They've added some AI effects in there. We're really not going to talk about that a whole lot, but they have added some AI effects. They've added some other cool things. So I think as we go through this, if you've used Audacity in the past, I'd highly recommend updating to the latest version just because of some of the additions that they've put in there. Some of the things are they've added master effects, which is we see in tools like Adobe Audition. And so these allow you to add, enhance the music, and in some cases it takes away some of the manual effect changes that a lot of us have done in the past. They've added a compressor and a limiter, which we'll talk a little bit about, that not only helps with audio, with voice, but it also helps with music. They've added themes, which I'm not a big fan of. I like the old classic, which most people do, but again, I think that it gives you options. They have a light mode, dark mode. The performance is a little bit better. I haven't really noticed the difference. That's what they tell me. It's all marketing, right? So themes, these are the themes I was talking to you about. You can also do custom themes. Again, some people like to have their own desktop. I prefer the classic theme. That's what I'm used to working in, and it's easier for me to use. I run on Windows 10, 11, Mac OS 12 and 13, and if you're so inclined, Linux, Ubuntu. Um, so some of the things you can do, again, edit, remove dead space, normalize and amplify your audio, equalize your audio, do fades, compress your music, do mashups. Again, we do a lot of those, and we see that more in custom. I want to just add a little bit that anything we do here, some of the music is copyrighted music, so it may end up getting, getting muted on the video, but for the most part, I haven't had an issue yet just because of the short version, and this is an instructional class. Um, some other things you can do, what we're going to walk through is importing versus opening a file, how to balance your audio, how to cut audio, trim audio, split audio, remove noise. Audacity does a good job at noise removal, background removal, hiss and pops, how to save files, right? MP3 being the most common, how to split your audio tracks, and changing audio pitch and tempo. Really, that's going to be more for if you're doing kind of voice work, but the capability is there. So when you go into Audacity, what you're going to see is you're going to see this type of screen, and I'll kind of do, when I do the demo, you'll see it. But there's a lot of buttons and sliders and everything else on the screen. For the most part, it's real easy. You're going to use maybe a small portion of them. And we'll kind of walk through that as well. And then again, so things like this, it's very simple once you get used to it. This is just an example of, hey, you can select an edit here. This is what it looks like. Record, play, edit, loop. So if you're working on a track, you can loop the track. So that's kind of the high level of, what this thing looks like. I do want to also, give a shout out to Jason Rasmussen. Most of you know Jason. He does a very good presentation, has for years, on actually doing your audio with your FM transmitters and sound blasters and the other tools when you're transmitting your audio and making sure your audio sounds as best as it can be. So I'll make a plug later, and but for now, just look up him. I think his last, I think it was VCS that we did in 2021 was the last time he had his presentation, and from what I understand, he's going ahead and updating it. So look forward to seeing that with the new technologies that came out. All right, so we're just going to jump into Audacity. So when you open up Audacity, this is what you're going to see, right? You're just going to see a blank screen. Up here is going to be your standard, selection tabs that you would normally see in any other application. This is going to be your pause, your play, your stop, reverse, forward, record button, which we do use that. Not so much when you're bringing in audio, but again, if you're doing voice work, or if you're bringing in audio from your local machine, and I'll show you how to do that as well. So we're going to go ahead and bring in a file. So bringing in a file, you can do it a couple of different ways. You can open, and when you open something, you can open a file, you can open up an Audacity project, and then you can also import. So you can import an audio file, and you can import other things too. And again, just kind of some nostalgia, I guess, if you will, back in the Nutcracker days and the early X-Lights days, in order to get your timing tracks, for the most part, people would use a tool like Audacity. They'd create their labels and then their beats. You could create labels, their beats, their tempo, and then bring that into the sequence. Obviously, we don't have to do that anymore. That was done via what they call plugins, Queen Mary Vamp plugins, which are now part of X-Lights. So when you're in Audacity, first thing you want to do is let's bring in a file, right? So we can open a file. I'm going to open up a file that I've already had open previously. We'll start with Baby Shark, because who doesn't love Baby Shark? It was either that or Mariah Carey, and I'm sure that you would prefer this one. All right. So hopefully you'll be able to hear this. If not, please let me know, and then I'll go ahead and adjust. But for the most part, you notice here, what you're going to see is now everything here is lit up. So we're going to kind of walk through these a little bit. Here's going to be, again, now you're going to see some of these tabs are going to light up here. We'll walk through a couple of those. Here's your music generation. This is your AI that they've added. I haven't had a lot of time to play with it yet. Your multiple effects. So within Audacity, you have a lot of different effects, and most of these have been here forever. They've improved some of them. They also now have real-time effects, so we'll talk about that in a little bit, the new things that they've added in this release. And then there's some other things, if you notice here on the bottom. So these are kind of like additional items. They're plugins. There's so many different plugins you can do in here to do different things. And a lot of people will use those, especially if they're creating their own audio. DJs, for instance, will like using this because they can go ahead and modify audio for their needs, right? So let's go into this. And again, I've got the volume set. Hopefully it's not too loud. So we're going to start a little bit of Baby Shark, and we'll kind of talk about what this all is. So here we can go to our play button here, and we'll go ahead and play it. You can also use your space bar, but since I don't have a camera on my keyboard, we'll go ahead and hit the play button. And you notice it starts out quiet. Okay, so that's kind of one of those things where a lot of music you'll hear, you're going to have lows and you're going to have highs, and they're going to be very disparately different, right? So what if, here's what happens is a lot of times
Oh,
we
there's
have
no
music.
audio.
Okay.
We didn't hear it play.
You didn't hear it play. All right. That's what I needed to know. Let me stop
I think when you
sharing.
share, you got to share audio.
Yep, share sound. Yeah, I thought I had it checked. All right, we'll try this again. All right, so little baby shark here. Let's see. Can you hear that now?
Yeah,
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So again, what I was saying was these normally, a lot of times in music, your intros are going to start really quiet. And so people have a tendency to want to go ahead and turn the volume up, and all of a sudden you get blasted with loud music, right? So what we can do is if we want to kind of increase this so that we have more of a what they call a normal sound. Audacity has a lot of great features in here, and I'm going to show you different things we can do with different audio. So Baby Shark just being an example here. You notice here too, if you look, you'll see that this is kind of your waveform, right? This is what your music looks like. And you'll notice here that, whoops, that again. You'll notice, where to go? All right, you'll notice up here, this is all the way at the top, right? So when we look at sound files, we have different ways of looking at it. Normally, we look at things in decibels. Decibels are measured in negatives, so 0 being at the high end. So typically, you never want to go above 0. Anything above 0, you're going to get what's called clipping. Now, the other thing too is you can increase your headroom on your audio to be right at that top at 0. So you'll still have it loud enough, but you're not going to get any clipping. And there's different ways to do that. There's different ways to avoid it. So let's say I want to take this quiet part here and I want to increase it, right? And again, I want it to not necessarily match the audio level here, but I want to go ahead and make it louder. So this is where we can use some of our effects. So one thing I can do, and to select, there's different ways to select. So what I'm doing is left click on my mouse and dragging, and it's dragging that portion. I can do that anywhere in the audio file, right? I can also increase and decrease my waveform if I want to look at it. Again, there's different ways to do it. The easiest way, because you notice the magnifying glass up here. So I can increase the waveform so I can see what I'm working on, or I can decrease it. I can also use my control button and then use my scroll wheel on my mouse. There's also shortcuts. So there's a lot of shortcuts within Audacity you can use. And we can look at those here in a second. So if I want to increase this audio, the best way to do that is I can select it and I can go into my effects panel. And these are some of the tools that most people are going to use. So we'll use amplify. First, we'll go ahead and amplify it. Now, do I want to, if I say peak amplitude at 0, that is going to make it equal to at the top here. If you notice here, and I'm going to go ahead and drag and make this, you'll see here in a minute, when I hit that, it's going to take, let me make this a little bigger. What it did was it took this part of the wave file, this part of the audio, it measured and said, hey, I'm at the highest peak, I'm going to measure this at 0, and then the rest of it, I'm going to go ahead and it's going to be balanced there, right? So what it does is it bases it on the highest point in that waveform in that audio file. So this will still give you the same effect that you want, but it makes the audio louder. And I have another file that I'll show you an example of that. So, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is we can take, and within here we can use another tool called normalize, right? So again, anything you do, you always have to select. If you double click the file, the audio file, it'll select everything in there, or you can just go ahead and select a portion. Again, I'm going to select this part of it. I'm going to go ahead and go into my effects rack, and I'm going to say, let's normalize the data. So now it gives me an opportunity here, if you can see that, it gives me an opportunity to decide what my peak amplitude is on this, right? So -5 is good. I usually use -0.3, which gets it right below that 0 mark, but still is where you can adjust it, right? If you're doing stereo audio, like in music, you can normalize the stereo channels independently. Again, you're never going to have to use that there's really not any use case for that for our purposes. So if I go ahead and do this, again, you'll notice that it did the same thing with that wave file, but it normalizes the data there. So it does it a little bit different the way that it manages it. And now I'm able to normalize it at that -5. So the other thing you'll notice when I did that, when I normalized, and I can repeat it here, right? It'll allow me to actually repeat that. If I go up here, it'll see here it says Control R or repeat to normalize. But if I go in there, when I look at this, it'll say, hey, it won't really let me, will it let me go below 0? So let's try to do it at 1. No, if I try to do 2 decibels, it won't let me do it. Or it will let me do it. So if I try 22, you notice it won't let me do it here, right? So normalize automatically is going to say, hey, you can't go above 0. We're not going to let you do that. So it's really kind of a safeguard, right? So it'll only go that far. Now let's say that I did amplify. We'll go back to amplify again. And this is where the nuances are. This is where the differences are, is it'll say allow clipping. So if I say here, and here I have a slider, and you'll notice it tells me what my amplification level is. Here, as long as I stay below 0, it's going to allow me to apply it. If I go above 0, you notice it's grayed out. If I hit allow clipping, it's going to allow me to do that. I'm not going to do that because it's painful, but just think about guitar distortion. That's what you're going to get. Once you have a clipped audio file, you can't repair it. So if you have clipping in your audio file, basically you're never going to be able to, even if you decrease the volume or the amplification, again, once you save it, you can't really fix it. So best thing to do is always, I would never check that box, right? There's no need for it. So let's talk about other things we can do with this file. I can remove this part of it. So let's say this is, I don't want this part of the song. There's a couple of ways to do it, right? And here I can cut it. So I can right click and do a cut. Automatically cuts it. And what you see what it does, it's what we call a ripple. So now it moved that file over. So now what I've done, and it hasn't affected the original file. That's another key here, is that I'm not doing anything to the original audio file. I'm still in a workspace, similar to working in Xlights, right? I haven't done anything to it yet because I haven't saved it. I haven't exported it. All I'm doing is I'm modifying my workspace here. All right. So now if I was to go ahead and save it, and I'll show you that in a second, it will save it like this. Again, you always want to save it under a different name to make sure you don't change your originals, because once you save it, if you save it with the original name, obviously you'll overwrite it. Now, let's say that I want to do the opposite and I want to decrease the volume here. So when I come to this part of it, say I want to decrease this part of the song, same thing. But now what I can do is I can go into amplify and I can decrease it. So I can make my peak amplitude, let's say I want to go down to 6, -6. So now it'll decrease that. And you notice here, again, you don't have the waves like you do here because this thing has been at the high limit. It's already been at the top. Now this file wasn't clipped, but the max limit or the high limit was set, the hard limit was set to 0. So that's why it kind of flattened it out at the top, because all those forms said, hey, I'm going to go there, because they were pretty much in that same realm. So now if we listen to this, so it gives you that effect as well. So now let's say we want to fade in, right? So let's say we have a piece of music and we want to fade it. We go to our effects rack. Now we can do other things with fades, but right now we're just going to do a fade in. And so you notice it changes that waveform, it changes that audio form. And now what we have is we can see how it's going to sound. And that's, as you do this and as you work with this, you're really going to be able to see, you're going to get to judge what your audio is going to do, right? So now we'll come in here. And we can do the same thing. We can do the same thing in the opposite direction. We can go in here and we can do a fade out. And these are basic fades, right? Fade in, fade out, again, similar to what you can do in Xlights, right? And again, we'll get the same thing. Like if you want to cut the end of a song off, right? So, and again, Control Z, or as some of our other friends say, Control Z. will always take you back, and you can always go back within that workspace, right? So in a file like this, there's a lot you can do. Let's say you only wanted to have it. Now, let's say you only wanted to play it up to this part. Let's say this was an introduction to your show and you were using this as an intro, right? You can go ahead and get rid of everything else if you wanted to do a cut. All I have to do is I can select everything here, right? And then these ones up here are kind of cool. It'll say trim outside, audio outside the selection, or Control T. If I do that, everything else, if this was in the middle, it would go ahead and it would remove everything on both sides. It's just removed that, it's done a cut. But again, I can do a Control Z and I can bring it back in. Let's say that I want to silence audio. I can go ahead and again, everything is by selecting the section or sections within the audio. I can go in here and I can select this little tool that says silence the audio. You notice now I have a flat line. What it will do is this. And now it'll just basically flatline it. There's no noise. It's 100% silence for that section. So, so that's kind of some of the basic things. And I think what you're going to find is as you're preparing your audio, and we'll talk about how to normalize your audio across different tracks. But as you work through your audio, there's a lot of different things you can do. The key is you want all your audio to basically be at the same volume level. There's a tool out there I think we've used for years, MP3 Gain. I think they stopped coding it back in 2018, maybe before that. You can still get it out there. It's a great tool. I would recommend if you want to go ahead and level a lot of audio, and I'll show you that kind of at the end. I think I have it. I think I can get it, or I have it in here. If you want to go ahead and normalize all your audio at the same volume level, MP3 Gain is the best thing to do. The difference between MP3 Gain and Audacity, you can use Audacity, again, the right tool for the right job. You can create you can bring in multiple audio files and you can normalize them to the same audio level. The problem is with Audacity, you're going to lose some of those frequencies just by the nature of the way Audacity works. MP3 Gain was designed so that they don't lose those frequencies. So at the end of the day, I highly recommend using MP3 Gain for doing, if you're trying to normalize multiple files, you'll get better results out of that. All right, so that's kind of the basics. Some of the other things on here are going to be when you set up your audio, your playback device, that's going to be pretty much your speakers, your headphones. I'm running this through a Focusrite DAC, right? A digital audio controller connector that connects to my mic and my headphones. So I've got it running through that. You can have it run through other tools like Voicemeeter, which is a virtual audio DAC, if you will. I can run it through, I don't have the speakers on my monitors. You can run it through your monitor speakers. You can run it through your computer speaker if you want to, by default. Recording device, again, depending on what you have and where you are. If you're doing any kind of audio recording, again, that's where you're going to go ahead and select what you want. And then your recording channels, mono or stereo. Again, if you're recording audio, because you can actually record audio with Audacity, music files, record in stereo. Again, the caveat is you got to have stereo. You got to have a microphone that'll record that. One of the things that people don't realize is when you're using something like a DAC, when you're using an audio interface, you're only on one channel, right? So right now my microphone is on one channel. If I go ahead and I record in one channel or in stereo, you're only going to hear it on the left side. You're not going to hear it on the right. So anytime I'm doing a type of audio recording, I'll always switch it to mono, and that way I know we'll be able to hear it in both sides. And you can convert a file back to from stereo to mono as well. All right, so let's talk about a couple of the things that we had in the PowerPoint. Splitting a stereo track, right? Maybe I want to go ahead and I've got two different channels, and a lot of times in your stereo, what they'll do is they'll take a mono file and sometimes they'll make it a stereo file. But for the most part, true stereo is you have multiple microphones and you're recording it, and you'll see that in some of the other music we have coming up. But let's say we want to split those tracks. So I can split the stereo track. And what I've done here, and each one of these is called a track, right? Now what I've done is I've created a left track and basically a left track and a right track. It's created a mono track out of that. So I can do different things with it. So if I want to go ahead and edit my audio on one side, but I don't want to edit it on the other, I can do it here, right? Again, most people aren't going to have a need for that. What they will have a need for, though, is going in here and splitting a stereo to a mono track, which is different. Before, I've splitted the right and left channels. Now I've just created a separate mono track so that both tracks are going to be exactly the same. Pitch and speed, we all know that we can go ahead and we can raise the pitch. If I want to, let's say here, I'm just gonna take this. Let's say I want to increase the speed of the whole thing because it'll do this. This actually does it for the whole track. You can also do it for the section. We'll go ahead and do that. You notice I've gone ahead and I've increased it. I can decrease it. Again, you may have a need for that. There are uses for that. So if I want to slow it down,
Baby shark, do 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 do. Baby shark, do do do.
I can change the pitch.
Baby shark. Mommy shark, do do do
I can change the pitch.
Mommy shark, do 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 do. Mommy shark, do 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 do. Mommy shark. Daddy shark, do 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 do. Daddy shark, do 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 do.
So there's different things you can do with that. Again, if I'm going to do it, you can also do it here in the effect rack. That's something new that they added. But I can go here into the effect rack, and I can easily go in here, and there's a pitch option in here. We'll talk about the compressor in a little bit. So here's change pitch. Again, this is where I said you would actually select a certain part of it. So now I've gone ahead and I've made those changes. Now it's back to normal. Let's say I wanted to and maybe this is the part that I want to go ahead and I want to change the pitch on right here.
Mommy shark, do do
What I would do is
do.
I'd go in here for this particular part of the clip, and now I go into my effect. The one thing about Audacity too, which is different than some other DAWs, they've started adding what they call real-time editing. Audacity typically has been in this. You have to stop it, you have to select what you want, make your change. You can preview it, but then you have to go back in and play it, and if you don't like it, you can do it again. So that's one of the nuances. They're working on real-time editing. So this is what we're talking about. We'll show this in a second. This real-time effects, because again, that's new. Bass and treble, you can change your audio on a file. We'll talk about auto ducking is kind of cool. I'll show you an example of how to do what ducking is. Ducking is where you automatically decrease the volume on one track because you have another track in there, right? But again, everything you see you can do here manually. You can add echo. There's EQ, which in audio there could be filter curve EQ is probably going to be one of the ones that you may end up using because you want to may roll off some of your bass here. So I'm not going to get a whole lot into EQ terminology and technology. Safe it to say that typically the human ear doesn't really respond to or hear anything below 100 hertz. So anything where you've recorded, especially if you're doing a voice recording, you kind of want to roll that up right around to the 100 hertz mark, and then you want to kind of bring it up here in this high end here. It adds a little bit of punch to it. But again, for the most part for music, you're not necessarily going to use that, although you could, right? There's definitely, if you definitely want to do that, there may be a reason for it. Tracks, everything's done on a track. I think we talked about that. You can go ahead and you can make it left track, you can pan. So you can go ahead and do a pan on one track, a pan on the other. Again, different reasons. It's really great when you're doing Halloween stuff because you can really kind of get that effect. See what else you can do in here. Because I use a lot of these, especially when I'm doing voice work, but for the most part with audio, again, you're going to use amplify, you may use duck, you're going to do fade in, fade out, you may use EQ, loudness. Let's talk a little bit about loudness normalization as well. That's kind of important. That kind of gets us to where virtually we're trying to get to when we're trying to get our audio all to sound the same. So the terminology of loudness normalization, right? So the human ear hears things differently than number one than you would think we do. So sometimes changing the amplification or the loudness of a track, you may not get the effect that you want. This is used also a lot for people that do podcasts. Podcasts typically, let's say that even if you're going on YouTube, right? You want to have all your audio to be pretty much level and sound the same. So when you submit your audio to a podcast site, they tell you, hey, you need to be at a certain loudness level or a LUF, right? And so what'll happen is that you want all of your audio to be at that same loudness level. Now you can do it at the decibel level. Remember we talked about decibel being that actual measurement of loud, measurement of noise, but perceived loudness is what they're going to use. So the perceived loudness, I'm going to change this perceived loudness to -12. So now what that means is if I was submitting this to say Apple or YouTube, if I was a podcast and maybe even for my own channel, this gives me a normalization across the board. So somebody listening to the different tracks isn't going to have to change their volume level because one audio file may sound different than another audio file. So I want to stop here for a second and ask, are there any questions so far? All right, so we'll move on. So now let's go into a project. Let's see where this goes. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into here. So this is something that I did, and there's a couple of ways you can do this. I'm sure you heard different versions of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out this track, right? I could have saved it, and I'll show you that in a second. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go in here, and I'm going to just pull in, I'm going to pull this in. Now you notice I dragged it in there, right? I didn't have to bring it in. I didn't have to import it. All I did was drag. So that's really nice. That's one of the features. Now, the first thing you'll notice in this file is it seems like it's really quiet, right? So I'm going to go ahead and play it.
Isn't there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about?
Now here, let's say, oh, I'm going to turn my volume up.
Isn't there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about?
Sure, Charlie Brown. I can tell you what Christmas is all about.
Now, if you look up here at your slider here, you're going to notice I'm running it like -30, -24, right? Now, if I raise my volume, it'll go up a little bit. What you really want to do is you want your audio to be as unless you're trying to get that effect, you want it to be as loud as possible. You want that noise floor to be as loud as possible. So that when you raise, but you never want to go above 0. So what I'm going to do with this, because this is the track.
Not. For behold, I bring you tidings.
Because this is Linus's speech, and it's very, very quiet. It may be quieter on your end, but it's quiet. So again, one of the things I can do is I can go in here and select, and I can go into effect, and I can go into normalize, and I want the peak amplitude, so the highest point. I'm going to take my highest point, and I want to make it up to 0. Actually, I'm going to make it -0.3. So now that gives me a nice audio file, nice wave file.
Isn't there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about?
So now all of a sudden I've just enhanced that audio and made it louder. Haven't impacted the quality of the audio. I've just made it louder. Now, a couple other things you'll notice here, right? So if you take a look here, and I'm going to expand in here, I'm going to stretch it here. You notice you have, see that? It's not really a solid line. So when you're playing that, you're going to get a hiss in the background, right? And again, this is very common, especially when you're recording audio on a microphone, you're going to get background hiss. So this is a perfect example of, and here you can select the track, right, and you can mark these two right before he starts his speech, right? And I've used this envelope looping because I want to make sure I'm not going to hit where he starts the speech, right? So what I've done here now is it's perfect, and I'm going to go ahead and just make it silence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit silence audio, right? There's other ways to do that. I can generate silence, right? And that's perfect when you want to add, let's say you want to add silence at the beginning or the end of an audio track. But now what I've done is I've made that part of it completely silent, right? So there's which is the effect you really want to get. The other thing you notice is in here,
Praising God. and saying,
Now there are ways you can get rid of the echo, right?
and saying,
There's a reverb in
glory to
there.
God in the highest.
Now maybe you want to keep the echo. I'm going to keep it in there for now, but you could, because one of the other things too is when you're working with these type of files is when you change the nature of an audio file, you're going to change everything around it, right? So there's an opportunity here in effect, right, called noise reduction. So what I've done is here, I've selected a piece of file that has some noise in it. I'm going to get the noise profile, right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here for the rest of the audio. This should work. And we're going to go into noise reduction again, and we're going to hit OK. Now what it's done is,
And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God.
now you still have that echo, that reverb in there, but it got rid of some of that background noise because I took a profile from here and I said apply that to the rest of the file. Again, it works, but you're going to get some loss in quality on the rest of your audio because you have to trade something off. Unless you're in there and you have, and you can do it, there's a way to do it, right? And I'll show you that with here in a second. Most people don't do this, but you can go into the file, right? And you notice as I'm increasing it, now you notice that WAV file, I can see these. So if I know where that noise is, or let's say that there's something in the background that you hear in there and you want to get rid of it, or you want to change something and you can pinpoint it, right? So I can actually go in here, and what I can do is I can use my pen file here, my draw tool, right? Okay, so now it wants me to go in here. Now see, it's letting me drill down here. So let's say I've got noise here, and this is an example. I can actually go in here and I can change this. So if this is where my noise is, I can change that one spot in that particular part of the file, and I can check it again. So if there's noise in there, and let's say you're recording something and somebody drops something, or you just hear something in an audio file and you want to get rid of it, you can get very granular in doing that, right? Again, not something that you would use on a regular basis, but there may be an opportunity for that. All right, so we're going to go back to what I'm going to do now is, let's say I made this change and I said, okay, so I don't want the draw tool anymore, so I'm going to go back here to select. So now let's say that I've gone ahead and I've added that silence, right? I'm going to do the same thing here, because why not? You made it, but you see up here, if you look in the meter, you can see the noise, right? You can actually see where that noise is. I'm going to do the same thing, and now when I play it, there's no noise. So let's say that I've gone ahead and I've done it there. I'm going to do one more here. And I want to move this over, so I just drag and move. And again, I'm going to go ahead and make it silent. Now, I'm done. I like the file. I like it the way it is. Now I want to save it. So here, if I hit save, and they had it saved before. Now it's the save the project. So let's say that I'm in the middle of doing this. I want to go do something else. And I'm going to come back to it later. I can save the project. And just like in X-Lights, it'll bring me back to where I was. I haven't rendered it yet. I haven't gone ahead and saved it, but it saves the workspace as a project. So when I come back, it's going to send me back exactly where I was. But let's say I want to export this, and I'm going to export this as an audio file. Don't use audio.com, and they've set it up so you can share. Don't want to do that. I want to export it to my computer, right? So what I can do is I can go here and I can say, let's save it to, I don't know, 3D objects, right? Let's say I want to save it there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the file, right? You notice how it has MP3 on it. You can get rid of that. You can change the name of it. I'm going to save that file. And you notice you have different options here. Now it's gone ahead and said, oh, save this file, save it here. How can I save it? There's different file formats. Again, what is it you want to get out of it? MP3 is the most common. It's what they call a compressed file. It's what we use for X-Lights 99% of the time. You can use WAV files, right? And a little bit of history, WAV doesn't actually mean anything. It's a name, I think it comes from an Israeli term, but it's a WAV file, but they call it a WAV file. It's the technology that was used. So they called it a WAV file. MP3 files came out, they're compressed. Most people aren't going to be able to hear or know the difference, right? There's other file types in here. Again, if you need them, but for almost 99.9%, actually 100% of the time, you're going to be using an MP3 or WAV file. The WAV file is going to keep the integrity of the audio exactly the way it is. So if I save this as a WAV file, and then I save it as, well, I'll do that. I'm going to save it as a WAV, right? I'm going to export it. And now what I'm going to do is do the same thing. And now this time I'm going to export it, but I'm going to export it as an MP3. And you notice here too, what do you have? Mono, stereo, custom. Sample rate, 44,100 is perfect. That's what you want. Leave these as they are. There's no real reason to change these. Back in the day, or if you're doing something specific, yes, you can go ahead and change it, but again, there's really no need to. And now we're going to export it. Okay, you notice it exported it now. And now file, if I do I'm going to do export audio, export to computer. And this time I'm going to browse. I want to see if it gives me. So when I go back into here, where was I? I don't remember where I was. 3D objects. Okay. If I go into here now, you'll notice that it's trying to save it as the one file. But I can go in here and I can look at properties. Right? It's 1.68 meg. Right? Now if I go ahead and I save it, if I go back into the WAV, it's probably going to be twice that size, right? So the WAV file is going to, you're not losing any of your audio, so therefore the file is going to be bigger. So there is a trade-off. Same thing with video, right? Do you save in 4K? Do you save in 720K? Again, that's where your difference is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and close this for a second. I'm going to go back to my original file. I'm not going to save the project. I'm not going to save the file. I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to now select this. Okay. Oops. I actually played it. Okay. So we're going to drag it in here. So we're going to drag it in here, and that is them doing Hark the Herald Angels Sing from A Charlie Brown Christmas.
Hark the herald angels sing.
All right, so I've got the audio file here. Now, what do I want to do with this file? Right now, again, I can do everything I did on the other files, right? I can increase volume, I can cut this off, but we're gonna do something a little bit different. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna import another file. At this time, I'm gonna import gonna import a speech. All right, with me so far? So now what I'm gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and do what we're gonna do a mashup here, right? So what I'm gonna do now is we're going to shrink this. So again, I got my control and I got my scroll wheel. I can do it either way. I can do it up here. These tools here too, this is another tip. Fit selection to width. This will break the whole thing basically, and it'll fill your screen. I can do my section here, the project, the whole project, or I can go ahead and I can find a, I can do a zoom toggle. I can zoom all the way in, zoom all the way out, right? So here's what I want to do with this. I'm gonna shrink it down a little. I want to go ahead and I want to I want to create a mashup here, and not really a mashup, but I want to do a custom job here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and have start the speech. Actually, again, remember, we're going to go in here. We're going to go in effect. Now this time I'm going to go ahead. Let's go up here. We're going to amplify, and I'm going to amplify this. I'm going to bring this to probably, let's go down to, let's say -3. Let's try -3. See what that gets us. All right.
Isn't there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about?
Sure, Charlie Brown. I can tell you what Christmas is all about.
Now again, if you remember, we wanted to go ahead and we wanted to remove that noise because we want dead silence here. Now, this is a very long pause, right? So this pause here, because Linus is walking over, it's 5 seconds, 6 seconds. I don't want that in my display, right? I don't need that long of a pause. So I want it to be very short. So what I can do again is I can select, right? And now I can right click and I can cut. And now what I've done here now
I
is
can
I've
tell you what
created,
Christmas is all about. Lights, please.
again, if I want to add my silence, I can go in here and do it really quickly here, right? Now, here's another, remember we were talking about effects a little bit. What if I wanted to change the way he sounds? So we're going to take a snippet here.
And there were in the same country shepherds.
I'm going to hit my effects. I'm going to add effect. Now, I have some third-party effects in here, like this Muse. Muse comes with, that's one of the new features with Audacity. There's different things you can do with it. But for the sake of this, I'm going to use what comes with Audacity. So Audacity comes with a compressor. The compressors, with these other things are kind of cool. Compressor is going to really give you what you're doing. What a compressor does, it's like what you hear on the radio. It compresses the audio. That's exactly what it does. And you know, don't let this bother you here. We use these a lot when we're doing audio recording, but I'm going to do this with different presets, right?
And there were in the same country shepherds.
You notice it gives you a
abiding in the
file.
field.
Now what I want to do is I'm going to say factory presets, and I'm going to say, let's try podcast. Okay, let's try that.
And there were in the same country shepherds.
Sounds a little different. All right, we're going to now try, let's try Deep Dive Master.
And there were in the same country shepherds.
Let's try Beat Booster.
And there were in the same country shepherds.
So in this type of audio, you may not hear it as much because you don't really have music in the background. But every one of these, you notice it's going to set up a different pattern.
And there were in the same country.
But you can also change you can change it here manually.
And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them.
So you can do a lot of what you want to do in here as well. And the compressor is really good, especially if you want to fatten up that voice. I haven't used it a whole lot yet. I do compression again, Adobe Audition. I do a lot of compression. But this is a case where you may want to fatten that voice up or do something different. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to create this.
Lights, please.
And now here's what I want to do is I'm going to bring them singing in the background, right? I don't have to do anything because this has already got to fade in. So I'm just going to leave it the way it is. And when he says lights, please, I want them to start singing.
Lights, please. And there were in the same country shepherds.
Now what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've just created my own audio file with Linus going ahead and speaking with the music in the background. That's one way to do it. That's it. It takes all of about 2 minutes. You can bring it in there and you can do that. Again, you can change the audio. In another case, I'm going to show you how Duck works. So that's one scenario. You can do it backwards, right? You could bring your music in first if you want to, and then you can, and again, everything is, it's easy to drag it. Or let's say you didn't want the Charlie Brown piece of it, you just wanted Linus speaking. So here's another tip. With your mouse, you can grab the edge of it, right? And let's see, it won't let me do it here. But again, I can cut this out using the cut tool. And then I can go ahead and bring this in first. And I can start it right here. So let's say I wanted to start it here.
To them, fear. There were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night.
Now let's say the music's too loud, but I don't really want to decrease the audio of the music because I can do that here. And there's a couple of ways I can do that. Again, I can use my amplification. I can use my normalization. I can also use another tool to go in here, and I can do the envelope tool. And the envelope tool allows me to grab a certain section. You notice here, I can grab this. I'm holding down the left click of the mouse. I can do a section here. So if I click and click, I can decrease a section, right? Again, a little bit quirky, right, until you're used to doing it. The best way to do that, though, is I'm going to move this here and I'll show you. Oops, I still have the tool on. I want to go back to the select tool. Now what I want to do is what they call is ducking, right? Now in ducking, the music actually, I'm going to do an auto duck, and I'm going to select this. And I'm going to do a duck. No, I don't want to save it. So I'm going to go to my effect, and I'm going to say auto duck. Whoop. Hang on. Do I have this backwards? Control must be placed below the selected track. Okay. So I'm going to select that, effect, auto duck. And now what it's going to give me is an option to reduce the music file anytime that there's the track here. So you notice what it did, it automatically decreased the volume of my music. Now I told it to go down to -12. I could have said -6. I could have said whatever. And now you'll notice.
And there we're in the same country.
Now that's kind of quiet. So I'm going to do that again. Except this time I'm going to go to, let's make it -6. We don't want it as quiet. It's going to go through, it analyzes and said, oh, I have a track under here.
And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock.
So that's another way to do that. Again, really simple. It makes creating a merged file or a mashup very simple. Again, I can export it, save it, and now I have my audio file. Questions? All right, we'll do one more. Let's open up. No, that's not what I wanted. Let's go to. We'll do this one. All right. So everybody knows the Grinch, right? So I'm going to bring in I'm going to bring in this file.
Welcome, Christmas.
So this is the end of the Grinch.
Welcome, Christmas.
You notice how quiet it is. Again. But here's the thing. I've got a peak here. So now if I wanted to say, oh, I want this to be louder, right? What happens is if I go in here and I do an effect and I say, oh, I want to amplify that. And I say, what it did was it based it here, right? And that's not what I want. So the problem is how do I get this to, I could do it a couple of ways. Something like this, the easiest way to do it is you can compress it. You can select the sections that you want louder. So especially when you got these peaks, the easiest way to do it is to go through and then just do your different sections. Because anything else you try to do, even if I go into loudness normalization and I say we'll say make it -6, you notice what it did is it really pumped this up here, and what you're going to end up with is
Welcome, Christmas. Bring your cheer.
It bounced it up to the top just like that other file. So it still raised it, but it didn't decrease any of the audio. So as long as it's not going to clip it, it's just going to go ahead and it's going to really just balance everything out. It's going to flatten that out. So what I've done now is I've got an audio file I can hear. So what do I want to do with this, right?
Welcome, Christmas, while we stand.
I wanted to have that last part, right? And again, this is a disclaimer, this is what I do. You don't have to do this. But I wanted to go ahead and create a file where I had his speech.
Welcome, Christmas, while we stand, heart to heart.
And I basically wanted it with other music. So there's a tool out there, if you're so inclined, it's called Vocal Remover and Isolation, where you can actually take an audio file, it'll allow you to split it out. It does a pretty good job. I've used it, and I'll show you an example of that here in a moment. So it's vocalremover.org, and you can get like 1 or 2 times, and then you have to, you got to pay for it. But you can usually get several options out of there, and it works pretty good, and I'll give you an example there. So you notice I don't really want the music in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, and I'm going to go back into here. Whoops. And I'm going to select this one. Oh, that's not what I want.
Well,
I'm going to drag this one in here. Now you notice it created a brand new track. I'm going to mute this track and you'll hear. Oh, sorry.
Christmas, bring your cheer. Cheer to all who's far and near.
So that was through Vocal Remover. Again, I'm going to go through here and I'm going to loudness normalization.
Welcome, Christmas. Bring your cheer. Cheer to all who's far and near.
Now, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because typically your vocal track is going to be in the middle of the rest of your audio track, and that's what these tools do is they look for that center track and it'll pull it out. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. So why did I do this? What was the goal of me doing that? I had a couple of things I wanted to do, and I'll show you a couple examples of what you can do with this, right? Let's go into here, and we're going to pull there. Now you see that was an AUP file. Now it opened up a brand new AUP file. So here's what I wanted out of this. So this is one example of what you can do when you're bringing in two different files. Now this is the full.
Actually humming. They're finding
This is
out
one
now.
part of it, another
Oh,
section of the
Christmas
Grinch.
is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do.
Okay, and here's what and
It started in low, and it started to grow.
and I went right into Glee Christmas, right? Now you notice I had that little spike there, and I've got to go ahead and I can decrease the audio on that. But what it is that's one way to do that. Just like I did with Charlie Brown, I created this mashup, if you will. Now let's say that I wanted to bring this over and I wanted to do it kind of as a nice graceful introduction. I can move this over here. Now here's what happens if I try to have them both. That's not what I want, right? So what I can do, it's called a crossfade. So I can drag and select. I can go into my effects and I can do what's called a crossfade. And I can crossfade my tracks, and basically the basic settings are fine. Now what it's going to do is it's going to decrease this lower track while it increases this track. And that's just a quick example of how you can do that. If I want to do it again, I can do a Control R. Maybe it wasn't what I wanted to do. It won't work because it wants me to select it again. In that case, there, I selected it.
And it started to grow.
And it did there because I had that peak there. But you get the idea how you can kind of cross those in there. And then I did another one because I wanted to do yet another version of it. Let's see if this is the one. So this is where I used that audio. Remember, I said I created that vocal there, and so this is another way that I do this, and this is one that I actually used in my show last year.
Welcome, Christmas. Bring your cheer. Cheer to all who's far and near.
So I went ahead and I used the Glee version, and then I used just the vocal for that. So that's just another way to do it. And there's so many different things you can do. And again, the beauty of it is you can save the file, you can go in there, you can make your changes. So you notice this saved it exactly where I left off. This here was done with a duck. This was a true duck. I didn't have to do anything with the audio. And I believe if I go ahead, let me see if it'll do it. It won't do it that way. All right, and they may have changed that. So before, when you had auto duck, and that may have been the music too. This may not be the one, but if you had auto duck when you moved your other file, it would automatically change on the other one. So this one I may have done manually there, but it does the same effect. So that's another thing that you can do when you're editing files. So this is the most common, I think the most common edits that folks are going to do. The other thing you can do, and that's why I had another example here, is you can do a mashup of just one song after the other, right? So let's say, and I'm going to close this out. Okay, I'm going to close this one because it opens up. Okay, this is the last one I have. So now what you can do here is you can just create one long audio file. Let's see if I can go near file new. I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to create one long audio file, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in Rock Around the Christmas Tree, and I think we'll bring in Candy Cane Lane. Why not, right? Because who doesn't love Sia, right? So let's say you want to do you want to create a mashup of those two songs, okay? You can do one of two ways. You can have them on separate tracks, which again, there's a little more flexibility when you're working with multiple tracks. Again, you notice this file here, it's not clipped. It had it had a high limiter on it, and they went ahead and they limited it to 5 here. And so probably what they did was they did it to 0 and then they compressed it back down again, right? And you'll see that a lot in purchased files. You'll see that quite a bit, especially MP3s, Amazon. You're going to see that more and more because that's the way that they record them, because you get that balanced audio. So if I want to create one long file here, I could cut it off wherever I want to, but let's say I just wanted to go from one to the other. I'll just do it right here. Now, I didn't like that pause, so I'm going to move this over, and again, now, if I don't like the fact that it's going to cross over into the audio, again, I can do a crossfade. I can do it on the same, actually, I can do it on the same track as well. All I do is grab it, move it up, okay? And I can do here. Now, you notice it won't let me overwrite it here, though. So I have to go from one to the other. Now, what I can do is I can get rid of this part here and move it over, and then I can do a crossfade. So I'm going to, it'll decrease one side and do the other. So I'm going to just do a cut here. I'm going to do I'm going to leave this the way it is. And now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to select this a little bit. And this will be like a radio edit, right? Where they go from one to the other. And I'm going to do an effect, and I'm going to do a crossfade clip. This time I'm going to do crossfade clips. Same thing with the tracks, but now what it's going to do is it's going to do it to the 2 clips. And you notice we had that sharp cutoff there because I cut it off, but if I hadn't, it would have been a nice smooth transition. But I always like to work on separate tracks, and the reason I like to work on separate tracks is it gives me the opportunity to move the audio over. And I can do this again and again and again, right? And I can bring it onto another track. I can bring it down here and add it to a 3rd track. So I can bring in Carol of the Bells. If I have 2 songs that I want to mash up together and have them play at the same time, I can certainly do that. It's really limited. Now this one, let's see what this sounds like. And that's it. Now if I wanted to save this, again, all I need to do is do a file, export audio, save it to my computer, and now I have that new file. Export other, that's going to be, again, if you're going to export your labels, because you can create labels in here, right? You can go ahead and you can generate labels in here. I don't do a whole lot of labels, so I don't know where they move. There it is, labels. You can do a label editor, you can add a label. So now I got a label down here, and I can call this whatever I want to. I can call this Sia. I can call this whatever. And now I can actually export and import these labels into Xlights as well. So I can break things out. You can save files by labels. So a label gives me the opportunity. I can move the label, right? I can expand the label. So if I want to have different sections where, let's say I have a drop beat in a song, or I'm going from, I want a track where I have, say, singing to just music, just instrumental, I can go ahead and do that too. I can do my beats, right? Remember the VAST plugins, right? Or the Queen Mary Vamp plugins. I can do my beats. I can, in the Analyze, I can, in here, tempo and beat tracks, right? So I'm going to go ahead and, again, same thing we used to do before. I'll select this track. If I wanted to do that, again, no real need to do it, but does that look familiar, right? The numbers look familiar, a little different format. And what it's going to do is it's going to run through, and now it's going to create a beat track from that audio. Same plugins that they use in Xlights. So actually, a lot of the audio features they pulled in from Audacity, because again, they were using Audacity for years. And you notice there's your same tracks, and I can export these and I can use these within my Xlights file or for something else that I'm doing. There's a lot of possibilities with it. And this is just scratching the surface, right? I mean, if I go in there, you can generate tones, you can generate like white noise, you can generate like the silence. There's a lot of plugins. Remember I said that if I go into my effects here and you start seeing things like I'll scroll down here. Noise gates. Noise gates are really cool if you want to block out noise at certain levels. So again, if there's a background hum, if you got a laptop or a PC and you're trying to record something, you can set that noise gate and it will actually, to a certain threshold, I think you saw it a little on the compressor, to a certain threshold, and that'll allow it to, anything below that, it'll actually silence it automatically. There's your reverb where we can cut out reverb or add reverb. Vinyl, we can make it sound like a vinyl record. We can do studio fades. We can do, this is where I was saying is I have different plugins here, right? So I have third-party plugins that I purchased for doing different things. Pretty much anything you want to. But the big thing here is you can go ahead and edit your files. You can shorten them. Most people will use this for doing nothing but changing the size of a file, the length of a file, right? That's pretty much, I think, the most common use case, changing the sound of the file, creating a mashup. Gee, I can't think of really anything else. I mean, those are kind of like the big ones I think that we've done here. So that's pretty much what I had for this. There's a lot more to it. Again, just play with it, download the tool and play with it. You really can't really break anything. Scrubbing's kind of cool because with scrubbing is good when you're trying to find a part of an audio and you can actually move it back and forth, and you can actually, it's kind of noisy because I got both these tracks here, but with scrubbing you can actually scrub in real time to find just the right spot that you want to be in. Let's see, just real quick, what else can you do in here? I don't know, there's so many different things in here. Preferences, let me show you real quick. Come up here, last thing, because we did talk about the different modes, the themes. Here's your dark mode. Come on, dark mode. There's your dark mode. If you like working in that kind of mode, there's a light mode. You can create your own. I mean, so they've added some things that are kind of cool. I don't really play with those. But again, I think that if you haven't used Audacity before, it's really easy to learn. If you have used it, there's a lot of different things you can do with it for your audio. And then let me go into here real quick because I wanted to show you, I don't know how many of you have ever seen Adobe Audition before. So Adobe Audition, part of the Adobe Suite, it is a more of a professional DAW. There's a couple others out there, but for the most part, I can go ahead. Let me do this real quick. Open recent. Remember the Welcome Christmas? So I can show you in here. Same thing. Here's the same file we did, and this was the end. Oops, sorry about that. I got the volume. Let me chunk that down a little.
Welcome, Christmas. Bring your cheer.
Now, the beauty of Audacity, remember before I have to actually stop the audio, move my files and my tracks around, I can do that in real time here. So as I'm recording, and again, let me actually turn the music down here more. All right, as I'm recording, I can move this to where I want it, restart it.
All who
I can move it over here.
are welcome, class. Christmas Day.
So I can do it while the audio is playing, so I can really pinpoint where I'm going to move that. So again, there's a cost to it, but it gives you, if you're really into doing a lot more audio work, the tracks are right here. You can get custom tracks. There is some automation in here, so there's where you're ducking. I can say, here's dialogue, here's music. You can set it to say, go ahead and auto duck. You can do a lot of things in here. It's very comprehensive. You can make changes on every single one of your racks. It's a little bit easier. There's some defaults in here. So as you get more into audio editing, and if you are so inclined, it's not a cheap option, but it takes it to the next level. But I will say that I used Audacity for years, and I can pretty much do everything in Audacity that I can do in Adobe Audition, although Audition makes it easier to put a lot more together in a shorter amount of time. Where does this kind of wrap up to? It wraps up to, remember, your quality of your audio, your output is only as good as your input. And I think Jason has said that you could have the best audio equipment out there in the field and in your show, but if your audio does not sound good, if it's too loud, too soft, if you've got noise in the background, um, the equipment that you have isn't going to make a difference. So, but I'll let Jason talk about that. I know he's, like I said, he's updating his presentation, does an excellent job and talks about that. So I'll just say that take the time, use Audacity, clean up your audio files. I mean, and you can do so many different things with it. And if you want to download MP3 Gain and go ahead and level out your audio. So that's pretty much it.
Was you going to talk about MP3 gain?
MP3 Gain. So yeah, let's talk about it. So let's go in there. I think I actually have it installed. Let me take a look. MP3 Gain. Yep. So MP3 Gain run, like I said, it can still be, you can still search and download it. So what I can do is here, I can actually add files. I can add a folder. So let's go ahead and I'm going to add some files here. Let's see if I can find, I want to find my audio here. All right. There, I'm just going to select a bunch of different files here. Now I'm dragging them in from a folder, right? So it's going to go ahead and there it is. So now it found it, right? So here's my different files in here. It looks at it and I want to do a track analysis. So all I do is I say here, go in here. It's going to select each file. And it's going to tell me, here's what I need to do with each file to make it all sound the same, right? And now what I can do is I can do apply track gain, apply album gain, apply constant gain. What do I want to do? You know, I want the gain to apply to all files. I can make the change here. Leave it at 0. But let's say that I wanted to, let's say I want to go ahead and modify it. I want to change the album gain here because let's say it's an album and I want the whole album to be the same. Now what it's going to do is it's going to go through here and it's going to pretty much normalize everything to where you want. And so what this will do is it'll take all your files there and it'll balance them out so they all pretty much sound the same. You'll notice here what it did was it said, hey, here I didn't add any gain, Oh, you know, I changed here, I changed it by 3, and then here by 0. So, and again, some of these I may have already did previously, so they're kind of normal. That's it. That's what it does. Here's the catch. It changes your files, right? So that's live. So I just modified these live files here. It actually went in and it changes them. So, and you really can't go back. Now I have a backup of these, so I'm not too worried about it, but you got to be careful because it is in real time, right? You can select certain files. So let's say you have a bunch of files in there and you want to go ahead and you only want to do these 3, say, right? I can select these 3 and only work on these 3, or otherwise it'll work on everything. It's that quick. So you can take a whole folder of audio and you can say normalize it and it'll do that. And it'll basically, you notice here, album volume 88.9. So it's pretty much made everything the same. So when you play those audio files, they're all going to relatively sound the same and people aren't going to have to adjust that radio, right? That's pretty much it. I mean, MP3 Gain is a great tool. It's that simple. Best tool out there. And I can change my target volume here too, right? So again, you notice here at decibels, it's got like 89. So it's not really 89 decibels. It's really more of a volume level. It's a percentage of volume. It's not really, because remember, decibels only goes up to 0. So you don't really want to, I mean, actually decibels is loudness. So you could, that's what they're doing here. is they're basing it on the actual volume level versus decibels when we're doing audio work. So, what else?
Anybody else have any other questions for him?
That's it.
I think Rick's got a question. His hand up. Or...
Okay.
Yeah, I talked to you guys earlier. You would help me with my train, my getting the matrix right and everything.
Nico,
So I think.
can you wait till after class on that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you had a class going. I apologize.
So,
What do I need to talk about?
anybody else have any questions on audio tonight?
Yep, it's Pat. Hey, Carl, don't you need to export MP3? Don't you have to add a plug-in too?
Actually, I think they used to have to do that, but I believe that recently Audacity has gone ahead and they actually bought the license, so you don't have to do that anymore.
Okay.
I think they've done that like in the last revision since this new company, the one that added, hey, you can go to our site and you can get all kinds of music for a nominal fee. They went ahead and they purchased the license to be able to include that, so you don't have to do that anymore. Yeah, that was the thing. You had to go in because of the licensing, because MP3 was a licensable technology. So, all right, I'm good. If
Well,
you're good.
I thank you for your information. It's looks like it's changed quite a bit since I played with it, so have to go back and play again.
The basic functionality is exactly the same. They've just added a bunch of bells and whistles to it. Actually, some of the effects they've actually improved the way that they actually manage the audio, so it actually sounds more natural. So that is free.
Yeah.
So free is good.
Thank you very much.
Yep.